and generally I feel like all three papers were concerned with hierarchies of knowledge production and canon formation, in the sense that not only but about what is a canon, and what kind of authors do we keep, the names that we keep hearing over and over and over again, and why. But I actually wanted to start with a little footnote, perhaps thinking about the whole question of Tamizdat and how we should define it, and again, returning to the hegemony of Russian culture. But Berlin in the 1920s, Russian Berlin, is of course what made possible in many ways the establishment of the Soviet print culture, because so much Gossizdat, before it was Gossizdat, was relying in terms of its publication infrastructure on German publishing houses that were publishing not only in Russian, of course, but specifically in Yiddish and Hebrew. Those examples I'm aware of, but it's this kind of this galaxy, as Karl Schlögen, the author of a book on Russian Berlin, called it, as a galaxy of Russian publishing industry that operated in Russian Berlin. And it's a very different kind of Tamizdat, because some of it is written here, some of it is written there, but all of it is published there with the purpose of being sold here and there, but also in the Soviet Union. Anyways, with this aside, Jesse, wow, it's just such a rich kind of multifaceted presentation, and at the end it's like, oh no, don't stop. We need to see more maps, and I'm sure there will be questions about that. But what I particularly appreciated in your early remarks was some thinking about gathering evidence and versus telling the story of the archive. But with that, my question is, what is an archive? What should constitute an archive? And because so much of what we're talking about is about circulation and tracing these kinds of patterns, but we at the same time don't talk as much about, let's say, the print culture and the material culture. And Siobhan, in your paper, you stress so much the smuggling of printing machines and forms of production and reproduction and techniques of textual reproduction, and the classes in silk printing. And the book, your book cover, actually, this amazing photograph, right? And I think the very material aspects of those printing machines, in a way, are very important. Last night at Elendea's keynote, she was kind of said something about the IBM and a new revolutionary way of copying the text, and she's like, no, I don't want to talk about that. But I myself really wanted to hear more about it, because I think that kind of archival knowledge is really very rich, untapped, and can absolutely complicate in productive ways what we kind of think about Tamizdat, not least because one way of thinking about Tamizdat and versus Samizdat, at least to me, somewhat in a cliched way, Samizdat is a typed text, right? Versus Tamizdat is always, in my mind, a book. It's a published book. It's a different kind of object. And thinking about the objects, I'm also, and just again with iterative practices, I'm very then curious about the kind of affective relationships that were established as a way of relating the aesthetic to the political. Again, thinking of Elendea's talk yesterday and thinking about the book exhibit, and someone comes in and says, the guy wants to read it right then and there, right? And so, but how do we account for that emotional experience that is just so central for the history of Tamizdat? Similarly, I feel like the kind of the quality of paper is just so very important. But some of my background is in art history, and in that what to me, one of the most exciting parts of Yasha's website project was actually seeing all the book covers together. Because in a way, artistically, they are telling their own story of the kind of design was possible abroad. And some of it is kind of very stern, and I don't know, I think, some of it kind of has these religious readings that can be implied with certain kinds of embellishments in their design. But I do think that we don't talk enough about the kind of the book cover aspect of it. And And lastly, so because I'm kind of trying to chart my own kind of commentary through archive and to material culture, and then with that, going back to the question of language, because Siobhan, you were writing so informatively and lucidly about second circulation in Poland, but I also imagine that all of it is written in Polish too, for Polish audiences, right? This is the question of who is the audience and how many people, and are there people outside of Poland who can read those books in Polish as well, and what kind of a lifespan of the, or impact, to use in an academic context, a fairly triggering word, impact those publications might have. And while cross currents is of course in English, and can we think of a lingua franca of any kind in Tamizdat? Was it even possible at all? And with that, yeah, I will thank you all for wonderful presentations.